walking around trying to make some connection, trying to see if people who know other people who have seen members of their family. And Mayor Giuliani was very careful today not to report that 4,763 people had been lost in New York City, and we're not even precisely sure how he arrived at that figure, but 4,763 people are still missing. And so the still very desperate urge for family members to find other family members is still very visible as people in New York City wander around this 5 by 10 block area at the bottom of the city trying to make a connection with family members in some way or another. Just to review some of the other things. The Congress today has been... Say again, please. Oh, you could have showed us that, by all means. Oh, it is. Okay, my apologies. So here's an example, by the way, on videotape of people looking for people that I was just talking about.
The hardest part is not knowing anything. I know everybody's working hard to provide information, but it's just, it's an enormous task, and it's frustrating because you're a parent and you want to find your son. But I know everybody's doing the best they can, and that's why I'm here, just to see if I could get his picture out there.
What are you praying for? I mean, pray to who? God took all these wonderful, innocent people away, and it's just, you know, it gives you no hope and no security and no, you know, it's just horrible.
We've called all the hospitals. We've been to the missing persons place. We haven't heard anything at all. My son was in building 2 on the 92nd floor. I talked to him when he saw the plane coming, and I haven't heard from him since. And we just need to find him. He's my only child.
I have to find him. My mother's still alive, okay? I don't know if she's how much longer she's going to be alive after this, but right now my mother is still alive. And look, if I find a body, I got to find something. I just want to know that he's okay. If he's dead, I know he's okay. I mean,
gives you somehow peace of mind?
I know he's okay then. At least I know he's okay. I don't know where, I mean, is he burnt somewhere, lying in the rubble? I mean, I don't know where he is. We don't know where he is.
Well, I certainly didn't need to go on talking about it because so many people, as we've seen so many times today, are simply so much more eloquent about that than those of us who are at some distance. Would you repeat what you said, please? Okay, let's go back to the street and Bob Jamieson. Thank you.
Peter, there are, in addition to people continuing to look for their relatives, several 100,000 residents here who are caught between this disaster and 14th Street, and who, in fact, are living in a neighborhood where there are no grocery stores open. Even if there were, the shelves would be bare. There are no restaurants open. There are no stores of any kind open. The subway is not running. They cannot go north of here. And so they're in sort of a suspended animation. There is, of course, a health concern, as there has been all week since the planes hit the World Trade Center, because of the tremendous pollution, which is not just smoke and ash, but in addition to that, asbestos, plastic, and various other things. And there was an ominous warning earlier today by some firemen to local residents that, in fact, the pollution may get a lot worse before they get all of this under control here in the lower end of Manhattan.
Thanks very much, Bob Jamieson. And now to pay one more visit to the street, here's ABC's George Stephanopoulos. We haven't heard from George all day, but that's for a very good reason. You've been off with your cameras.
That's right, Peter. I've been walking. You talked about people walking aimlessly through lower Manhattan today. It's really a separate city of 285,000 people, and I would say it's divided into 3 zones. You're only allowed below 14th Street if you can show you live there or you have a legitimate work reason to be there. And the area above Houston Street is like a pedestrian mall. There are a lot of inconveniences. You can't buy newspapers. Some of the stores are closed, but the parks are filled. People are walking around, and it's basically working at some level. Then, of course, you come to the right side of Ground Zero, which is just a search and rescue operation. The Lower East Side is kind of interesting, and I hope we can pick up the video here. I was carrying this little camera. It's an area now near City Hall that looks like it's been hit by a neutron bomb. All the buildings are intact, but the place is abandoned. John Street is where I was. You can see the tape of John Street. It's just an abandoned street covered with fine dust, no people whatsoever. That's what the Lower East Side is like. And then when I came through there, I made a right turn, and I was basically right upon Ground Zero, Trinity Church. That church, the oldest church in Manhattan, at the base of Wall Street. Its graveyards were filled with, I think we've moved ahead now to the Millennium Hotel we've all heard about. You see a lot of windows broken there. But Peter, I should point out that people are working all around the Millennium Hotel. You see the assembly lines of people up on the rubble working there in Ground Zero, passing the rubble back and forth, passing buckets back and forth. I continued to walk south then through that World Trade Center Plaza, and I don't know if the camera shows it yet, but there was a chilling statue there of a metal man that carried a tribute to the heroic rescue workers who worked there. And after seeing that, I continued to walk south where there's far more damage. That South Tower had the most damage, Peter, and we saw at that area great deal of rubble. The flag that you were talking about, an assembly line of workers that had planted a flag right in the middle of the rubble that was very reminiscent of that statue we've all seen of Iwo Jima. Crushed cars, buildings all throughout that plaza were devastated. I would say the buildings on the south side were those that had the absolute most damage, the most devastation. And finally, Peter, the work just continues, even though everyone is on a hair trigger. Even as I was there late this afternoon on Pine and Cedar Street, all of a sudden at around 4 o'clock, there just came this word, evacuate, evacuate. People thought one of the buildings was going to come down. It was a false alarm.
George, is there any change in the pace of the operation between what you saw today and yesterday?
It seemed to be about the same, Peter. I will say it seemed a little bit more organized. Yesterday when I was walking through that area, except for the main work in the middle where the cranes were working, a lot of other groups were working on their own, almost in small posses, people going out in gangs of 3 and 4 to look through peripheral parts of the World Trade Center Plaza. Today it seemed far more organized, and Peter, there was far more security today around the entire perimeter, and everyone did seem to be even more nervous about possible building collapses. And finally, Peter, today, one other big problem that is affecting not only this plaza, but the whole downtown area today is far more smoke than we've seen before. I don't know if you can get a flavor of it over my shoulder right now, but we ran into many families, even though they've been allowed by the police to live here, we saw them leaving with luggage, with their pets. They're saying, we just can't take it anymore. Our kids don't feel safe, and they've been told that the smoke is going to get worse, so they're just evacuating, even if they're not forced to.
George, you mentioned Trinity Church, and you went by it very quickly. That's a church that goes back, I think, to 1846. Has it been damaged, or just has rubble fallen into its gardens? Amazing,
Peter. The church looks completely intact, except covered with this fine layer of soot and smoke. But what's so eerie about it is there's many trees, as you know, in that graveyard, and they're all littered with debris. The papers, the shredded papers just hanging from the branches, and then they've just covered the entire graveyard, except standing tall and straight in the middle of that graveyard is still the stone of Alexander Hamilton.
George, just stay with us for a second, because we're going to go on and talk about a couple of other things. Very interesting about Trinity Church. In the 1840s, it was regarded by New York City as a beacon of hope for ships sailing into New York Harbor, and the New York mayor of the day used to refer to it as the glory of our city. I don't know what it says that it's standing, and many of the more modern buildings have fallen down. That's no comment on structural integrity. But people who come to that part of New York just notice that Trinity stands out in an incredible way as the representation of another era in many ways. We talked to Cynthia McFadden a little earlier about this notion that the volunteers need things like boots. She mentioned boots, gloves, hard hats, goggles, oxygen, baby powder, and neosporin. ointment, for one thing, and there was, she described to us, an acute shortage or an awareness of a shortage on the east side. We suggested maybe the Federal Emergency Management Agency should handle this. Turns out they didn't know about it. Cynthia's just talked to them, to their representative in New York. They didn't know about it. We asked them whether or not they should handle this, or how do they feel about a public appeal for issues like this, and they have promised to get back to us as quickly as they can. But it is quite stunning, after hearing from government officials for a long period of time that they have everything they need, to hear from our reporter on the street that people are coming and asking for things which they say they need very badly. So message at least delivered to officialdom, if by any chance they're listening to this broadcast. Back to you, George, again. How close were you able to get to absolute ground zero today in terms of that place which we can see from where you are now currently standing? And secondly, what is all that smoke today? Is it current or is it just enduring?
No, it's current, Peter. Earlier in the day, a very large fire broke out, one of the largest, according to rescue workers who were on the scene. I think it broke out near the South Tower, and that's been creating a lot of the smoke so far. You know, this is like one of those charcoal fires. I hope that's not an inept analogy, but when you turn over one of the coals or you turn something over, it can create oxygen for the fires, and that's, I think, what's happening in many of the areas on top of the rubble. I would say about 100 yards from the rubble, particularly near Tower 5 of the World Trade Center. We got quite close to Tower 5, right up to the lobby of the Millennium Hotel. And as I mentioned, that was one of the most surprising things to me. As I said, the building does not look to be in good shape at all. On the other hand, there are workers all around it and even right up leaning against the building. So at least those are the very center of the action at the half hour or so that I was there didn't seem too concerned. But there was an awful lot of smoke all over the place. And one other difference from yesterday, Peter, that I could tell, Lower Manhattan has become something of a maze. Every other street, some streets are open, some streets are closed because the streets may develop problems on their own. A suspected gas main may be breaking. People feel they may be in the path of a building that might be falling. So there's no definite pattern to the streets right now. They're open and close, on and off. It changes every 15 minutes. One other remarkable thing I saw today, Peter, the dust has become occasion for graffiti artists of all kind. And I don't know if we're going to be able to show this, but I hope at some point we'll be able to show some of the graffiti that people are now writing in the dust. Obviously very strong messages like vengeance is mine. But the most striking one I saw was something that I think captured what might be a debate going on in the country right now. One person had come along and written, "Forgive them, they know not what they do." A second had come along, crossed out the "not," and said, "Kill them." So they knew exactly what they were doing, according to that person.
Thanks very much, George. Incidentally, that Trinity Church shot that you had, that's the current Trinity Church, or the present Trinity Church. That goes back to the 1840s, but the original one was built in the 1690s and has been a beacon at the corner of Broadway and Wall Street ever since then. Lisa Stark on information about Kennedy Airport today through your sources in aviation.
Peter, I've heard from government sources that apparently four passengers were arrested late today, as they tried to board an airplane at New York's JFK Airport. They were taken off that plane, or taken off as they tried to board the plane, both by Port Authority police and by the FBI. We have no word on what type of plane it was. It was a United Airlines plane, we know that. We don't know what type of jet. We don't know where it was headed. We don't know the key question, why these four passengers were arrested, were taken off by the FBI and police. But they were taken off as they tried to board this plane, and a ground stop was immediately put into effect at both New York area airports, both LaGuardia and JFK.
Okay, thanks very much, Lisa. You answered two questions there. It may in one case be jittery officials and maybe even somewhat more legitimate than that, but it does tell us that Kennedy Airport and LaGuardia Airport are both now trying to operate. Linda Douglas is on Capitol Hill with tensions there. Linda?
Well, they have just evacuated the Capitol, Peter. We don't know the reason, whether it's anything legitimate or not. Of course, as you've been reporting all day long, there have been bomb scares everywhere, and it could simply be something like that, or it could just be a fire alarm. But people here are very, very nervous. We had one of our aides down, one of our ABC folks down monitoring the actions of the Appropriations Committee, the Senate Appropriations Committee. Security people had gone in there, swept the room with dogs, and suddenly word was given to them that they were evacuating the Capitol for some reason. The security people ran. Majority Leader Tom Daschle and the Minority Leader Trent Lott up the stairs to their offices, and then they began moving people out of the Senate, and then a siren went off in the House, and they began moving people out of the House. I am in an office building, a Senate office building that's directly across the street from the Capitol, and people are so nervous here that without an evacuation notice, staffers were flooding out of the building into the street. So there's a state of anxiety here, but no one yet knows what the cause of all this is.
I wonder, Linda, whether or not representatives, senators, staff on Capitol Hill are not a little bit suspicious that we're getting ourselves involved in a spate of prank bombing threats. I realize the need for caution, but I wonder if any of them have commented on that.
We haven't talked to anyone specifically about that yet, simply because this is the first time this has happened here at the Capitol. You know, the Capitol was evacuated on the day that the planes all crashed into the buildings because we were told there was a plane coming toward the Capitol. There were all kinds of frightening rumors. There was a concussion from an explosion here. So there's some nervousness, but it hasn't affected this place yet. There's very high security here, as I mentioned to you before. Never before has the Appropriations Room been swept by dogs and security people before the Majority Leader goes in. So tensions are high, but I don't know if the fear about false bomb scares has really taken hold yet.
Okay, let's just have another. Thanks very much, Linda. Let's just have a look at the Capitol again, if we may, while we're talking. This is another example, of course, of the power of terrorism, which is in its very randomness. And it is indeed magnified by the fact that it then instantly gets worldwide television coverage. We have seen the members of the House and the Senate in ordered, unified, sober and somber and dignified tableau ever since this happened a couple of days ago. And now we see them all out on the streets of the Capitol. So whether it is a prank is too mild a word for it, but whether it is that or it is something more serious, here is an image of the U.S. Congress wandering around the lawns on either side of the Capitol at this moment. And this, of course, is exactly the way they do not wish to be seen. Not their fault, of course, exactly not the way they wish to be seen at this particular moment. We are now joined by the Secretary of the Treasury, Paul O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill, first of all, thank you very much for joining us. I know that you were in Japan on Tuesday when this attack occurred. I assume you were on a government aircraft and you came home on a government aircraft.
That's exactly right. We'd been in China for 5 days, and we were arriving in Japan, and 15 minutes after we